Hey. Okay guys, so sorry. I am back. Let me pull this down and get really close. Okay. So if you hear me, you can come back. If you come back, if you could let me know. Sorry about that. I thought I had it all together. Okay, so what I did was I have a couple sheets here of Yupo paper, which is it's a fun paper, but it's really cool for alcohol inks and things like that. And it's like a synthetic paper, and the paints literally just sit on top. They don't absorb down at all into the paper. But these are just samples of paper. I already have one kind of prepared, because what I do is I will wet my paper, and then I will sprinkle these brusho pigments. So here they are. They're like in these little tubs. So, and then I have to kind of let it dry a little bit before I start painting. I mean, you can start painting right away, but I like to let it dry just so things get set up where I can then go and put in my subject or whatever I'm doing and use that as a background. So I'm going to go ahead and just spritz my paper with a little bit of water. I just want to show you how they work a little bit more. And then I'm going to choose the same colors that I used in the one that I have ready. So I used a little moss green, and what I do is I put a pin tab at the top instead of taking the lid off, and I sprinkle them this way. So I put a little moss green. I think I used a little olive green, and they're not really like olive green. It comes out orange and bluish. So they really, or when you think of olive green, you're not getting, it really is what it is. They're watercolor pigments, powdered pigments. You spritz a little bit more water on there, get them going. And then you can, you know, they move around. I mean, they really move around when it's really wet. So what I do is I just kind of let it sit, and then I go back in once it's dry, and I can paint something over top, because you can move this pigment around on this kind of paper. If I spray these on watercolor paper or sprinkle these on regular watercolor paper, they would stain. They don't really, you can't spread them around. So, but on this Yupo paper you can. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. So that's just how I get it started. I set it up like that, like I sprinkle it with water, and I you know, whatever color I'm using, I just put it on there. And if I start to get big puddles, I can just blot it and let it dry, and that's what I do. So I try to do a couple sheets at a time. That way they're ready when I want to start painting. So let me move this away. Let's sit this over here. So I have one already ready that I did this morning. So I sprayed this one down, and you can really turn it any way you want. I sprayed this one down. It's all dry, but I can still feel the texture a little bit. It's all dry. And then I just start, if I don't see anything going on where I can try to carve something out of here, then I just design my own design and start painting whatever I'd like right on top. And sometimes it doesn't work out, and sometimes it does. So if it doesn't work out, then what I do is I'll respray it with water and start over. Or I'll spray it with a little bit of water and bleach that I have saved and start over. So that's kind of what I do. I have these ink tense blocks as well, which are really cool to use. I have liquid watercolors that I like to use sometimes. So there's so many different ways that you can create pretty paintings using a variety of things. So I'm just going to start with using watercolors. And what I'm going to do is, I kind of did the greens because I'm going to do some reds and pinks as my roses, and they're complementary colors, red and green, so they really will help each other stand out. Now, I don't want to create mud. I don't want to put mud. I don't want to put red and smush it into this green, or I'm going to get a muddy rose. So what I'd like to do is first pick out an area where I want to put that rose, and I just start I'm using a really small brush. I just start removing a little bit of that pigment, but I'm going to start in the shape of a rose. Now I used that moss green, and I used that olive green on this one, and I think I used a little lime green as well. And so what I'm doing, I'm just kind of moving this pigment around so that I can start putting in my rose shape. And I know it's probably hard for you guys to see it, it's too little. So let me go over and grab some, I'm going to grab some pretty magenta color. It's just watercolors. And they just slide, they really do just slide on the paper. So I put a little bit down, and then I just kind of tap the edges. With my damp brush. And I rinse my brush very, often. I go in and rinse it a lot, blot it, and then sometimes I get a little too much water. But the fun part with this is, if you make a mistake, you can easily correct it. Can lift out. Let me bring my camera down a little bit more. Maybe it'll be kind of easier to see. Hang on one sec. See if that's a little easier, because this is a small, I'm doing like a 5x7. Hey Gail, hey Mary. Oh, good, good, good. Sorry, I didn't see your comments. So I'm just using a really small brush. This is like a number 0, actually. It's really small. I can switch over. Let me switch over to a little bit bigger. I really, for these brusho pigments, I like to use this these Princeton Snap brushes. This is a number 6 round. They're real springy. I think they're more for acrylics. But I like to use them for, because I can really press hard and, get these things to, get this pigment to do things. So I'm really lifting out here. So you can't let these pigments intimidate you. They're harder to control than just watercolors on watercolor paper, but they're just fun to work with, and you get all kinds of, you never know what you're going to get. So but you can control them, a little bit. Once things are drier, it's much easier. Hi, Mandy. Oh, Vancouver. Wow. Oh, thank you so much. So glad you could be here tonight. What's the weather in Vancouver? Is it still chilly? It was hot here today. It was probably in the 90s. So I'm just pushing that pigment around. And let me show you what these Inktense blocks do. So basically, they're ink in a block. And you know what? Let me turn this low light on. Maybe that's what's going on. It doesn't look bright. I got a low light. Hang on. Turn it around. See if that makes it better. Okay, maybe that'd make it better to see. So these Inktense blocks they're by Derwent, and I just have this set of 12 Inktense. I bought them on Amazon. They're just fun. I like to try new things. So I just take my wet brush. Hi, Mary. Good to see you too. Take and pull some ink, and then it's kind of like just like using watercolors. And then I spread it around. Just making little rosy shapes. And then I can soften them up as well. Okay, let's try another. So I'm going to come over here. Kind of like composition wise, I like to do one over here. Now I'm not clearing this area out, but I'm going to just start right over that pigment, and as I'm working it, I will be removing some of that pigment. It's also fun to do this on those tiles, my ceramic tiles. Play with that today a little bit. So it's not just paper. And then once they dry, I go over them again just to kind of, you know, add any more details. 37. Oh my goodness. Oh wow. Nice. 37. Dang. It's gold. So just like even with regular watercolor painting, sometimes you have to let areas dry before you can go in and add your details. If you keep working an area while it's wet, you're just kind of pushing that pigment around and you're not going to get anywhere, and it gets frustrating. So you have to let things dry and then go in with your details. But the neat thing about this is I already have a pretty cool background, you know, so I'm just going in now with my creating some flowers, but it could be anything. You know, you could be doing anything, really. And I always tell my students, don't ice in that cake before it's baked. You want to get your base in. You got to get your base layers in, you know, your foundation first, and then you go in with those details. Don't worry about details first. Now, if I really don't like something that I've done with these pigments on this paper, I will spritz it down with a little bit of water and bleach, and it really brings it all the way back to the white paper. So I'm just using my watercolors here. I'm doing more. I'm just kind of suggesting. Oh, sure. Watercolor paints, I use all different brands. I really do. I use Winsor & Newton. I use Core, a few of the Core paints. I mean, I have so many different brands, Mandy. I'm not married to really any single one. I love M. Graham paints. They're very nice. I also like American Journey paints, which are by Cheap Joe's. That's his brand. And that's a website, cheapjoes.com. It's his brand. It's called American Journey. That's really good. Also Blick, Blick Arts Supplies. That's also a website. Their brand, Blick, is good. Daniel Smith is good. I mean, there's just so many. There's so many with watercolors. But I'm going to say M. Graham, Winsor & Newton, American Journey. I'm going to say I kind of hover with those three. Core, I really like. They're very highly pigmented. The brusho pigments, I bought these on Amazon. They're by Colorcraft. And they come in sets, and they also are sold individually, as well as on the art websites. They're on there as well. So my first set was a couple of years ago. It was a set of 6. And I stuck with that set of 6 for a couple of years. And then I started getting into them again. And then I purchased the set of 8. And then I purchased some individual ones. So, yeah, now I have a little bit of a collection. But what I tell my students is, you know, if you're first starting with watercolors, the paint is really not as important to me as the most important thing when you're starting is you can use a cheaper brand of paper, but when you really are wanting to do paintings and not just practice, the most important part of watercolors to me is the paper that you use. If you're not using good paper, you're not going to get good results at all. And I mean, some people prefer like the Strathmore or the oh, what's it called? I don't remember. You can get them at the craft store. It's on the blue pad. I can't think of what it is, but anyway, if you use a cheaper brand, they're good for just playing and practicing. But when you're really serious about doing a nice painting, and I know it's scary because you're like, well, what if you mess up and you're using good paper? Well, the bonus with really using nice paper is you can paint on either side. When you're using a less expensive watercolor paper that's not 100% cotton, you only get to use the one side. So it kind of is okay. So if you spend, you know, if you spend money on good paper, you really are getting double because you can paint on both sides. Canson, thank you, Mary. Yeah, it's like made of pulp or something. It's not cotton. So the water, it's frustrating. I mean, I have students on Thursdays that the art studio where I work, they have supplies there. They have really good supplies, and they have really not, you know, less expensive supplies. And if you're just a beginner and you're just starting out, I have on the materials list that comes when you sign up. Use the less expensive for right now because you're just starting. But when we do paintings, I tell them, go buy yourself because they sell individual sheets of the nicer Arches brand. That's what I use, the Arches brand. Go buy one sheet. It's a 22 by 30. You can have them, they'll cut it there for you into 4 quarters, 11 by 14s, 4 11 by 14s, and you can paint on both sides. So you're really getting like 8 sheets of watercolor paper. It's $10 a sheet. So you're getting 8 sheets. So I tell them when we do a nice painting, go get yourself that, or you're going to be disappointed in how your paintings look if you're using that Canson paper. I just struggle with that. I struggle with it. So that's what I always tell them. So to me, paints, you can use student grade. Brushes, you don't have to buy expensive watercolor brushes. But the paper to me is what's most important. I can't stress that enough, because I see those poor ladies in there. They just are like, it just is not blending and it's not flowing, and I'm like, it's the paper. Go get a sheet. We're not practicing brush strokes today. We're doing a painting, so go get some nice paper, and it really is worth it. So just a little tidbit there. The Canson at the craft stores, it's okay to start. I started with that, but when you really are serious about doing ice paintings, it's really nice to invest in better quality paper. And I really do love, I'm just cleaning some of this up here. I'm going to get a little sidetracked. I really do love teaching. I get such enjoyment out of it, and to see their progress. I'm going to add a little blue. No, I'm going to add a little violet for like a little bit of a shadow here and there. Just add some other color. You're welcome, Andy. I mean, anytime you have questions, I love to help. Do you paint a lot, Mandy? I mean, are you new to watercolors, or been doing them for a while? And I'm a very I like very loose style. That's just more my style. Loose type of paintings and expressive. I paint very intuitively. Sometimes I don't know why I do what I do, but I just do it because I watch my paper. I watch what's happening on my paper, and I let the painting tell me what it wants to be. And the difference here with this Yupo is when you have a damp brush and you go to put paint down and then you go to kind of spread it out, unlike watercolor paper, it's kind of like you're lifting it as well, which makes it a little harder. But with watercolor paper, I can try on new. My mother-in-law paints with acrylics. Oh yeah, so I love it because I have. Real quick, let me show you something. So here's a piece of my good watercolor paper. If I have if I do a little bit of a rose here, or just a little rose shape on dry paper like that, it'll just sit there. But what I love about this is when you hit the edges there, you can, you know, spread that pigment out. You can spread it out, and it really, you know, if you add more, and it just explodes. Unlike this Yupo paper, when you try to spread it, you're kind of wiping it away. So, I mean, I love both. I love it. I love both. But so where I was going to go with that was a couple of the ladies in my classes, when they signed up, you know, I have a beginner's class and I have an advanced class. They signed up for the advanced class because they painted with acrylics. So they thought, well, because we painted with acrylics, we're going to know how to paint with watercolors. And they had a rude awakening coming. They were like, well, wait, you know, so, but they're doing good. They're doing good because they had some painting experience, but they're, you know, they were just expecting to take a glob of paint, put it on the paper, and just work it. And that's not how watercolors works. So they, you know, but they're doing fine. It's fun. I was like, oh, you should have really been in the beginners, because it's such a different medium. I love them. Sometimes I gotta take some tissue. Yes, me too. Me too, Mandy. Yeah, I'm going to be doing the, you know, we're going to be playing with that in my membership that I'm getting ready to open, or that's open. You can register now, but it starts May 1st, really. We're going to be doing this kind of thing. We're going to be doing watercolor paper and just playing with all these fun things, and I'm excited about it. It's going to be fun. So if you're interested in that, Mandy, it's on my website, bluepearlart.com. It's called Whimsical Watercolor, and there's info all about it right there on my website. And I will be teaching you all I know. As soon as you wet this, it just starts flowing on this paper. Plus, I'll be doing that on my new Patreon, teaching one lesson a month, one painting, but that'll be a pre-recorded. That won't be live like in my membership group. I'll be live in there. Thank you, Mira. I know. I really love it. I think because it was such a wonderful surprise to discover later in my life, and that now that I can share with other folks, and it's really not, you know, whenever I tell people, they ask me, what do you do? Oh, I do watercolors and I teach, blah, blah. Oh, I can't draw. I swear to God, that's always the first thing out of their mouth is they can't draw. Well, I don't draw either. If I can't, if it's something specific I have to paint, that's not hard to just freehand. If I can't freehand it, I'm tracing it on a light pad. You don't have to know how to be a good drawer to paint. Especially my style. I mean, if you're doing like, yeah, realism, where your paintings look like a photograph, then you gotta know how to draw. But no, that's not my style. Oh, Gail, me too. Me too. But you have to. Don't let it frustrate you. Can't let it intimidate you. And always remember, it's just paper. If it doesn't, trust me, I've had days where everything just looks like crud and it gets put in the garbage. So we all have days like that. You just have to keep going. And I have a folder that I have in my little area where I teach. I have a folder of a handful of paintings from when I very first started to paint, just to show those beginners, look how it used to be. And they laugh, and they are hideous, and they really are. And you know, and then I show them what, you know, how they can improve if they just keep playing and practicing. And I tell them, if you just come here every week, and this is the only time you paint when you come here, you're not going to really learn. You have to do it. You have to practice. You have to just put paint down to paper. And don't expect a Picasso every time, because you'll just get frustrated and you won't do it. And this does dry lighter. You know, they do dry a little bit lighter, and that's why I go back and add things. Let's put one down here. I'm like making a line. I don't like that. So let's put one over here. Thicker pigment kind of works better with this. Very expressive. And just also, nothing has been done in my house. Nothing since that hurricane. Still living with walls cut out. Oh my gosh, what a nightmare. But we had to hire an attorney. Our insurance company is like MIA. So, oh yeah. So it's all good though. It's livable. Our room is still a shambles. But I have a little place to paint, so I'm all good. That's another thing. If you have to get your paints out every time you paint, you won't do it as much. It's just a hassle. It's nice if when you have a little bit of an area, even if it's a little tiny corner, where you can just leave your paints out, because that's the beauty with the watercolors too. You can leave them out. Hey Tanya, how are you? Thank you. You can leave them out. You don't have to, they're not gonna go to waste, because you just spray them down when you're ready to use them again. Spray them down with some water. Let me stick some of this red in there. Or it's orangey red. Spray them down with some water and they're ready to go. Unlike acrylics, you if you don't use it, it kind of gets wasted. I'm using that brusho, Tanya, and these are Inktense blocks. So I kind of use a little variety of everything. And I have these liquid watercolors too that really are fun to use. I'm always up for something new. And then what happens is, see now with this paper, I have to seal it. Like if I were to frame this, I have to seal it first, where you don't have to seal your watercolors on watercolor paper. But these would have to be sealed, because if this got wet or water dropped on it, it would just psh. So you have to seal them first, and I use that Krylon Kamar spray, sealer spray, and it deepens the color a little bit, so it helps it and enhances the color a little bit, which is kind of nice. So I did give it a spray, let it sit for about an hour, and then I spray it again. It is Yupo paper. Yeah. Oh, thanks. Thanks, Mary. Yeah. It is Yupo paper, Tanya. I just for this brusho pigments, because it sits right on top of the paper and it doesn't absorb down. I was showing a little bit a minute ago here. This is watercolor paper, and if I sprinkle these, even on wet paper, so I don't want to get that wet. So if I wet this watercolor paper and I sprinkled some, this pretty Ost blue, sprinkled a little bit of this on my watercolor paper, so pretty. And I can spread it around a little bit, But where those dots are, they're staying. They're staying. So see, like I couldn't remove that if I wanted to. That's the difference. I mean, you can definitely. I've used brusho on my watercolor paintings before, and they really turn out beautifully, but I just use it kind of as a background, and I do it pretty much after the fact. I've painted something. So, but you know, you just have to experiment. But that's the difference. Like I can't really lift out like I can on this. So when you're just starting with them, it's fun to do it on this paper because, like, let's say, let me go get my other one that I just did. I'll show you guys. And I'll show you what I mean. So this one's dry that I just showed in the beginning here that I spritzed on the Yupo. I don't want to mess that one up. So let's say I don't like what's going on right here. I can just take some water and then just take some tissue, you know, and blot it out. And it comes out. So I can then add more or whatever I want to do. So that's why I like using these brusho pigments on this Yupo paper. I mean, you know, I'm going to do both. I'm going to do both. Some days I feel like being a little bit more in control and doing something a little bit more tight and in control. And other days I just want to throw some paint down and let it fly. Depends on my mood. Use some of this turquoisey. A little of that in there. A little pop of color. So I just keep everything kind of handy and close by. So you never know when I'm going to feel like using. Yeah, I tried brusho but didn't know what I was doing. I know, Tanya. I know. It's a learning curve. It really is. You have to. That's what I'm saying. You just have to play. I play all the time. That's just how I. That's how I learn. Really, I play all the time. There's also another brand of paper, so there's not just Yupo. There's another brand called Nara, N-A-R-A. It's just like this, just like Yupo. I think Yupo is made for like alcohol inks, but you know, Nara I think is not quite as expensive, so I'll have both, and I like them. I like the Nara just as well. We got a little, it looks a little muddy right here to me, so I'm going to just add a little water. And I'm going to kind of lift out, make it a little brighter in there. See how it does that? Can't do that on that watercolor paper with this. You can with watercolors though. Like if I was to use watercolors on my watercolor paper, I can lift it out a little bit. It does go. I got these little pissy ant things sometimes. This time of year, they come every year. I got ant trap. Probably because half my walls are cut. A little brusho does go a long way. It sure does. And you can also take, you don't have to just, you can take the lid off. Now this is lime green, and look at that color as I spill it on my board. So you can take this, take a dry brush, and you can take a little bit out that way. And let me just spritz a tiny area here. So you can see how that just woke that right up. And then you can split, you can do it this way as well. There's lots of ways to use this. But I try to keep the lid on them because you see why. And then my hands are orange. But look at that. But they're just fun. They're uncontrollable. I mean, they're not uncontrolled. They are a little unpredictable. That's the correct word. Unpredictable. But fun. I think that's what I like about them. Yeah, thanks, Mary. It will. It will. I think they don't want to pay what we need to, for the work we need to have done. Everybody, it's not just us. It's so many people around here that are going through the same thing. It was a little too thick paint. See, I dropped water. Dropped water right there. Sometimes my paintbrushes, little water beads up here on the ferrule, and I don't see it, and it drops down on my paintings, but it's okay. Yeah, I do get it everywhere sometimes. Oh, I change it pretty often. I use a really big bucket, Mandy, so it doesn't get really dirty really fast. But I do change it. I like, yeah, I do. Sometimes, before I was using 2 different containers, but now I just use one big one. Change it pretty often now. Yeah, me too, Tanya. I mean, even if you use these pigments and you can't really see any shapes or something you can get out of it, you can always use it as a background to paint a subject on to it. I was using too small a bowl and kept running. Oh yeah, you have to. Yeah, you need like something large. Like like a not no. You don't want to use anything small because yeah, you're gonna have to change that water every 3 minutes. So definitely use something larger, a large plastic. You know, I use wonton. I used to use two big, large wonton soup containers, large plastic containers, because they get yucky, or a large mayonnaise jar or something like that. But yeah, you definitely don't want to use small little bowls or cups because it gets dirty fast. What kind of paints are you using, Andy? Or and paper do you have? Bunch of supplies, or it's just starting? I'm just playing here. Oh, it's very different type. They look like paint chips. Oh, is it in a little, like a little palette with the round, are they like chalky? Do they like chalky paint? Okay, I'm gonna leave this one. Let me show you guys. I wasn't gonna show you, but I'll show you. I'll show you something else. I started earlier and I've done nothing with it. But I think I'm gonna do some palm trees. Let me get it. Let me see which one. I think I'm gonna do some palm trees. So I did this towel earlier, this 6 by 6 inch, and I just sprayed some water and put some of those pigments down and haven't touched it. And here's what I'm talking about. Like, I don't see anything on here. Anything that I could carve out. So let me show you how quickly I can do, you know, like cards, like paint. Oh, are they like where, like okay, it's like a piece of paper and it's got paint on it that you can pull out? Like you can open, like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I think Daniel Smith makes something like that. I know there's other brands too. I don't like this, too much going on up here. I use this angler brush, 1/2 inch. Creates some really cool palm tree effects. So this is on a tile now. See, I can just use a real light touch. With this angler brush. Makes really cool palm fronds. And what I would do with this is, again, I would seal it. I would seal it, and then I would get a little dark indigo watercolor. I would seal it, and then I would pour resin on this. Make it really cool. So I'm just playing with you guys. But I'm going to come on and do a watercolor as well, just regular watercolor. Isn't that cool, Mir? I know. So many things you can do if you just let yourself think outside the box. Just from that angler brush. And then you can, you know, if you didn't like what was going on down here, you could just wipe it off. Create a little bit of a horizon line. But I have found that I love color, so I have found that sometimes I get carried away and use too many of the pigments, the brusho pigments, and then I get such mud. Oh God. So I have to rein myself in sometimes. Let's get a little color in there. I know. I know, Mary. I'm telling you, I can't help myself. Some color. Expressive watercolors. I'm just using all watercolors here. I don't like it, wipe it off. Don't be afraid to try different things. It's distracting to me. Can clean things up. All with this angler brush. It's so fun. I feel like I'm, sometimes I feel like it's cheating. Okay, the cards I use for nickel fearless. Oh, okay. I've never heard of that. Bye, Mary. Thank you. I'll have to check that out, Mary. Thanks for putting the link. Yeah, I mean, here's my palette. My palette's a mess. It's just one of many. I keep, all my watercolors here. So I have so many different brands. Yeah, I really do. I keep them on plastic containers. I probably have 5 palettes. Some are smaller and some are bigger. That's the main one I've been using lately. But, so here you go. See? Just think outside the box and have fun with it, really. Don't overthink it. Well, let me show you real quick what these, liquid watercolors. By Ecoline. That's what I use. So that's a watercolor. Yeah. That was, well, it had a little brusho on it, Tanya. Had a little brusho I did this morning. I let it dry and then I just went back in with some watercolors on that tile. So these liquid watercolors are just what they are. They're liquid watercolors. And they come in these, and this is that Yupo paper, so I'm going to be able to move it around. They come with these droppers. And you can just, same thing. Take a little water. Watch this, I just tap it. Just tap the edge. A little bit of water. Now if I were to do this on my watercolor paper, they're a little more staining. And they just really kind of explode. And you can lift out these, out as well, a little bit. It might stain the paper a little bit, but you can, lift out. So that's the liquid ones. Let me add a little bit of violet. Just because why not? And let's add a little bit of this blue brusho. See, I'm putting this on dry. And then I'm going to spritz the whole thing with water. And then you just, I mean, you can just go to town. You can just go to town. I don't think this will be anything, but you know, you can see what I mean. Just really fun. Let me dump that. That's just, I just dipped it in my water. Look at it. You just have to experiment. That's just the only way you're going to know what you like, is just by playing and experimenting. And that's so pretty, those colors. Could let that dry and see what I could do with that. You see my little light here. Let's put that away. Get it away from the edge. But once this dries, I could come in and, you know, see if I can create something from that. Who knows? Oh, yeah, right. Isn't that true? I know. You see these, and you see these hanging up in big galleries, and you're like, how, my 3-year-old could do that. I swear. I'm making a really big mess here. But, yeah. You just have to play. And I love to play. Love, love. Make a tree. So I would have to, let's see, let me see, yellow, blue, let's put some lemon yellow. Get some greens. Just by adding that lemon brusho pigment. Spray it down a little bit. Now we'll get some greens. I mean, I went from that pink, so now it's a green and blue tree. Be a sunset. Oh, let me get this fat brush. Look at this big old brush. That is a big brush. And usually I don't use it on small pieces like this, but I'm just going to use it on this. Usually it's for a larger sheet. Let's see. Oh, I did see that, Mandy. Right? So subjective. Like who really? Let this run. Nice little landscape eventually. So, yeah, I'm just really goofing off here now. But that could be kind of cute. I'm going to let that dry. And then get some kind of landscape thing going with that. But, alright guys, I'm gonna go. But thank you so much for joining me tonight. I had a lot of fun and did a lot more than I thought I was going to be doing. So if you have any questions about anything, please let me know. And don't forget to check out that Patreon if you want. The link's there, and I'm going to put the link to my website as well if you're interested in my new membership group where we'll be doing all this kind of stuff. So anyway, thank you so much. Any questions, please let me know. And I swear, Gail. Yeah. Thank you, Tanya. And you guys have a great rest of the night. And I will talk to you. I don't know. I'll be live again, but I will definitely make an announcement before I come live. So thank you guys so much. Have a great night.